Welcome to Landlord Diaries, where we talk about midterm rentals and the opportunities behind them. We'll share landlord stories, talk about maximizing investment potential, and discuss how to live the very best landlord life. This podcast is proudly brought to you by Furnished Finder, the place for everything midterm rentals. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoy our content.
Hello, listeners. It's Kelly Bailey, your Austin, Texas podcast host, here today from the Austin, Texas area with a handful of midterm rentals.
And I am Katie Lyon. I'm in the Denver area, and I am a proud member of the Furnished Finder team, and I've got a few properties myself. So we're all on this landlording investing journey, which is so cool and so fun. Today, we get to talk to Jane, and Jane has the most heartfelt story and really shows us all how a devastating personal situation can be made into something beautiful. And the way that she's used the platform and formed these new relationships with travel nurses through her property is something that I think, Kelly, it both got you and I like thinking a little bit differently, and just it was a little inspirational. So I'm so excited for everyone to hear it. Please don't forget, everyone, that these episodes are brought to you by Furnished Finder. So if you are looking for a furnished monthly rental, or you have a property that you're looking to find a great tenant for, be sure to check out furnishedfinder.com. Thanks.
Hello, Katie. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing great. Our guest today is from Charlottesville, Virginia. Without further ado, let's bring our guest on today. Today's episode will be a heartwarming interaction with Furnished Finder host Jane Foy. Jane's career was in morning radio for over 40 years, and she has recently started renting out her master bedroom on Furnished Finder. Her current guest has extended her hospital contract and her stay with Jane. Jane has also written an inspiring book within the last few years called The A to Z Guide for Primary Caregivers of Dementia Patients. Welcome, Jane. How are you today?
Very well. Nice to see you. Thank you for having me.
You are welcome. We're excited to hear your story. So first question. Everyone has a really cool story about how they choose to rent out a room or an entire unit on Furnished Finder. So why don't you share what your story is with us?
Sure. My husband had been diagnosed with vascular dementia 9 years ago. And after about 8 years of caring him for myself, it became an untenable situation. So I found a lovely and very close by facility that specializes in care for dementia patients. And so I was left with a master suite and a home that I share with my dog. And I had heard about travel nurses from some travel nurses I had met through the medical center at UVA.
Oh, okay.
And so I found Furnished Finder on the web, and I really researched the company, and I really liked what I saw. Well put together website, a lot of cooperation with by the phone or text or whatever. I just thought it was really a very good business plan, and it just looked like an organization that I would trust myself with.
Aww.
So with that, I then took everything out of the master suite, including the carpeting, floor to ceiling, and replaced everything. Replaced the flooring. It was all new paint. Put in a step-in shower. And put all new furniture in there. And I tried to choose colors that were restful, not overly feminine, but not totally neutral, grayish, because I really felt that I would have almost 100% female occupants. So I put a lot of thought into that. Will they feel comfortable? Does it feel homey? Does it feel cozy? And so I came up with a design and sent away for a lot of furniture. fortunately have friends who have husbands who are very handy.
Oh, great.
Put everything together for me because I'm not really all that good at that. And then we were off and running. And my current tenant will be with me until December of this year, 2022.
Oh,
So
great.
that'll be 9 months that she will have been with me.
Wow, that's so special.
I know. It's wonderful. And we enjoy each other's company a lot. She works very hard. I try to keep myself and the dog quiet because, like a lot of travel nurses, she works at night.
Okay.
And so that's how I got started, and it works out very well. My husband is the facility he's in is less than a mile away.
Oh,
that's
that's
great.
perfect.
So I can just come and go as I please to see him. And I have somebody living here in the house, and she seems to like it a lot. She's staying with me till December.
Okay, I love that so much. Let's move on to the next section, which of course is diving into why you got into renting your master bedroom out. You've already covered, but once you decide, you kind of have to build it from there. So, how did you find Furnished Finder, and what was the process like converting your bedroom, or honestly, your entire home into a shared investment property? You mentioned a little bit, but let's get a little deeper there.
Okay.
And I would tack on to that. Sorry, I would tack on to that question and say, why did you choose your master versus a secondary bedroom, which I think would
Nice.
be intuitively a lot of people's first choices is to preserve their master and
Good question.
lease out a different bedroom.
Okay. Well, the reason is I wanted my guests to have complete privacy. Since it's not a separate facility, it's not an apartment above the garage, it's not a cottage,
Right.
in the back. So I wanted her to feel as though that was her space and had complete privacy. And I live in a townhouse, which I like very much. It's the exact right size for me.
Oh, good.
But it's described as a 3-bedroom townhouse, but the third bedroom really is teeny.
Yeah.
And so I have always used it as a dressing room.
Right.
And the reason is because when I was working and I was doing the morning show, I had to get up at 4:30 in the morning.
Whew.
So
That's early.
That's early, and it's also very rude when someone else who doesn't have to get up at 4:30,
Right.
and you're banging around looking for clothes and all of that. So
Right.
I tried to distance myself and made the second bathroom on that floor mine, and the little teeny bedroom my dressing room, just so I wasn't waking him up.
Okay, so this master bedroom is on its own floor.
No, we have all the bedrooms are on the second floor of the townhouse, and this one is at the end of the hall, facing the front of the house. So there is a lot of light, and it also has, for the size of the townhouse, it has an enormous walk-in closet. I swear you could put a double bed in there. And then, so I thought, well, these are people that are going to come. Golly, I have no idea what sporting equipment they're going to come with, or,
Right.
So I wanted them to have as much space for their stuff as possible.
Great.
And so, and I can tell you, my current resident moved in 3 months ago. It will be 3 months on June 5th. I have not been in the inside of that room since she got here. There's no need for me to go in there.
Right.
So they know. So they know. Now the rest of the house is for both of us. I have a tendency to use this particular room. This is my office and quote unquote family room. But on this lower level is an exercise room and the laundry. And then in the first level is the kitchen, dining room, and living room. And my guests have the freedom to use whatever they choose. They can have a meal at the breakfast bar, they can have a meal at the dining room table, or take their meal back up to their room, whatever they choose. We share the refrigerator, we share the freezer, and it all seems to work out.
Now, did that feel like a big shift for you going from sharing your home with a spouse to opening it up to a tenant?
I deal with it the way I deal with traveling as a solo female on a tour. You know, there's going to be, when I go to Italy, there are going to be 23 friends I haven't met yet. And
I love that.
So I feel as though this is a friend I haven't met yet. I enjoy being a hostess. I entertain. I have dinner parties a lot because my hobby is cooking. And I don't know. I really respect what these travel nurses do. And so if they're going to work 12-hour shifts and they're away from home, maybe it's a nurturing thing. I don't know, but I want to make sure that their experience in my home, in this town, in that hospital is a positive one.
Well said.
And old enough to know that, I mean, these are grown-up people, right? So you don't babysit them, you don't nag them, you don't ask them where they're going or how come they got home late. But you want to be a welcoming host, and you want them to feel as though they are very comfortable in their environment for the time that they're here.
And you're creating and nurturing those relationships before you guys have even met, which I think is
right. Well, I try because I want to get to know them a little bit before I lay eyes on them, and I want them to know me a little bit too. And
I mean, I was looking over your property listing, and I was telling Kelly, I'm like, she keeps their favorite fruits on hand. Like, if my husband could do that, that would be great.
So how do you find this information out?
I developed a questionnaire,
okay,
a tenant questionnaire. That may come from having been my husband and I had a restaurant at one time, and there were 3 sleeping rooms on the second floor. It was a country inn and a grill.
Oh, so cute.
So when people come and stay with you at an inn, kind of like a B&B, you ask them, what do you like? What don't you like? And I figured, well, it's not all that important that you find out what everybody loves if they're staying one night. But if you're staying for 3 months,
it's very
I want to know a little bit about them. So the questionnaire is all the standard stuff.
What's
name,
standard
address.
to you?
Standard would just, be name and address, phone number, email, make of the car, license plate number, emergency contact, name and number for an emergency contact. Do you have any allergies? Do you have any food issues, allergies, or, I wrote on it, there's something that you really hate. There's anything you really can't stand. Then I ask them fun stuff like, what do you like for breakfast? Do you drink coffee? Drink tea? Do you drink wine? Do you drink alcohol? And then I have in parentheses, we're all adults here. You're allowed to have a cocktail anytime you want.
Right.
So we talk about food. I want to know what to have on hand. I am not a tea drinker at all. And I rarely even have iced tea. But both of my last 2 tenants are big iced tea drinkers. So we always have a pitcher of iced tea ready to go.
That's so thoughtful.
And that small stuff goes so far.
So when do you give this questionnaire out? Is it when you're meeting someone and deciding if they're going to stay in your home, or after they've already signed the lease?
It's when we're in the discussion, when they've decided they want to come here, and but we kind of do everything at the same time. We do the background check and the questionnaire at the same time. So we exchange all the emails, so they know that they'll get an email about a background check. And then we'll do the security deposit at that time. We get all that stuff done. And then we agree on a time of arrival. And then I'm here and ready and waiting for them when they get here.
Great. So what do you enjoy most about being a host?
I have to say it's the diverse backgrounds
Mhm.
of these nurses. Like, as I said, I have a great deal of respect for what they do, and all three of them have had different specialties, and
Mhm.
so I've learned so much about. I've learned about being an oncology infusion nurse. I have learned
Oh,
about
wow.
being an ER psych nurse, and I've learned about being a med surg nurse. And uh, so that is just their backgrounds. My first guest was originally from Japan. My second guest
Wow.
was the cutest thing. She's kind of a daddy's girl from Virginia Beach, and just as cute as she could be. And my current guest is, although she was born in the United States, she was born to parents who were from Ghana.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
wow.
And she was raised with many African traditions, and she's traveled extensively, and so that learning about her background and her parents and the extended family in Ghana and all that, it's been fascinating.
That is fun. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, living with people who aren't you.
Right.
If I wanted to live with someone who's like me, I'd move in with one of my sisters.
Mhm. Let's cover one more question to wrap up this specific section, and that would be, what is your investment strategy, and do you see yourself doing this long term?
I wanted it to be of good quality. And from Furnished Finder, by the way,
Mhm.
I went on and found all of the hints that they give you for what
Oh,
to
from
have in the room.
the Furnished Finder landlord tips ebook.
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
great.
and one of the primo one had to do with the bed. So
Hmm.
get a good mattress, which I did, an
Mhm.
excellent mattress, and invest in really good bed linen.
Yep.
And they recommended bamboo,
Mm,
so I did. And then really fluffy, thick white towels for the bathroom,
Hmm.
okay.
and a big fluffy white robe for one of a one size fits all kind of thing. Um, Nobody has asked me to take it with them when they leave, but they can if they want. But that was that meant a lot. I mean, that because really, when you think about it, if you're working 12 hours and you come home and you have a bite to eat, you need to sleep, and you
Right.
don't want lumps and bumps. And I also invested in blackout curtains,
Great.
and well, actually, what I did was I invested in room darkening
Hmm.
Hmm.
drapes, and then I have plantation blinds also on the
Okay.
windows. And for the first two guests, that was fine, but my third guest is very light sensitive,
Okay.
so she was embarrassed to tell me, and she went out and bought room
Oh,
darkening blackout
Oh.
curtains. I said, I hope you take these with you when you go, because I would have purchased them in a heartbeat, but she didn't. She was embarrassed to ask, but she was really light sensitive.
Uh-huh.
Another one of my guests was very heat sensitive, so and
Uh,
she was with me over the winter. We actually turned the heat vents off in the bedroom and only had one in the bathroom,
oh,
oh,
because
okay.
she
wow.
needed to have the room really, really cool.
Mm.
You know. So then otherwise, I wanted them to have a comfortable chair
Hmm.
to watch TV if they wanted to, and
Hmm.
then a comfortable chair and a little desk area, and then the rest was just cosmetic stuff.
Which I think I remember from our previous conversation that and from our previous conversation that your TVs are only in your bedrooms, right? You don't have them in the common room.
The TV, there is a flat screen TV in her room, and
Hmm.
there's one down here in the family room. I
Hmm.
do not have one in the living room on the first floor. That's the area that I use for conversation. And so we
Great.
don't we then none of my guests are real big TV watchers anyway, but
Okay.
most of the time they'll have their iPad, they'll have plugs in. They'll be watching their shows on their iPad or sometimes on their phone. So nobody has really missed that.
Now I'm going to back up just a little bit. So as far as your overall investment strategy for renting out the room, is that something that is top of mind? And like, is that important to you? Do you have it? Is it to help pay the mortgage? Is it to, supplement any income, or is it more of a desire to host and to give back, and any financial benefit is cherries on top? Right? Like, is that something that's been a part of your process?
Probably about 60-40.
Okay.
The rental makes retirement a little easier.
Right.
It makes it actually a little more fun.
Right.
Because I do have that extra income to travel, which is I hadn't been able to do for almost a decade. So that makes it possible. And then the other is just, enjoying hosting and helping somebody be in a comfortable spot when I know they're doing important work.
Awesome. Well, if there's nothing else on this section, then we'll move on to what we call the landlord logistics section. Is everybody good with that?
Sure.
Yep.
Okay, great. So I've taken questions directly from what we've already mentioned, the Furnished Finder Landlord Tips ebook, which is available to anyone that would like to utilize it under the Resources tab on Furnished Finder. So let's get into our first question, which is, what is the price of your master bedroom, and how did you decide on that price?
It's $1,400 a month.
Okay.
I just broke it down to what I thought would be a reasonable rate per night.
Okay.
Okay.
Based on the quality of life and what things cost here in Charlottesville.
Okay.
Now, did you look for any comparables around? Did you search, or did you just strictly look, where did you look for comps, if you will?
I worked with someone from Furnished Finder to see if they could find me within I can't remember what the radius was, but not too far away.
Sure.
And it was coming in where my facility, my room was a little bit pricier than a couple but then I went online to look at their property, and I thought that's why.
Right.
So I thought that with the quality of the furnishings and the attractiveness of the room, and then some other perks that I have. I mean, I have a beautiful deck that all of my guests have used. Morning coffee, afternoon, I've got a lovely little patio in the backyard that overlooks my herb garden. Plus, I wanted them, but then there are also those other hostessing essentials.
Right.
One of my current guest enjoys blended red wine. When she has a day off, she wants to have a glass of red wine, and it's on the wine rack, and she knows that she's welcome to it. So I just thought I'm gonna make sure I have my home stocked with what people like.
Amenities are very valuable to people.
Yeah. And
I mean, amenities and location and a welcoming face. How far is your property from the local hospitals?
The hospital where she works, 3.4 miles.
Wow.
And they have special parking for the overnight staff. So she's in a safe environment when she leaves here, and she's in a safe environment when she gets to work.
That's great.
The other thing I find is interesting too is having a dog. Mm-hmm. My dog is going to be 12, but she acts like she's 2.
What kind of dog is this?
She is a Australian cattle dog, German Shepherd, Schnauzer,
Oh my
SPCA
goodness.
special.
All the fun stuff.
And she's really, really friendly. But she gets so excited when people come over. And if we're sitting just chatting, she'll come to me and she'll sidle up to me and I'll give her a pet. And then she'll walk across the room and and sidle up to my guest and she'll get a pet there. I think even if these women don't have dogs of their own, because obviously they're leaving their home for 3 months at a time, there's something settling about having a dog.
Right.
Aw.
Has anyone brought their own pet with them?
I don't permit that.
Okay.
Because for a lot of reasons, I mean, the main reason, if you're working 12 hours a day, somebody has to take your dog out.
Right.
And it's probably not going to be me. So,
right.
So,
hey, that's fair. And it's good to know your limits and the boundaries and, make rules in accordance, right? Like,
and that's really like the only rule. I don't, the room is, the suite is for one person.
Right.
And no pets. And that's really kind of the only real rules I have. And also because we live on a cul-de-sac, our lane is just barely a 2-lane lane. My guests park in my driveway. I park on the street.
Oh,
that's very
because
thoughtful.
If they're coming in early in the morning when it's dark, or they're leaving when it's dark, depending on what time of year it is.
Right.
And we have a playground across the street, which is really for young kids, but you never know if a basketball is going to somehow end up on a windshield, and I would rather it be mine than my guests. So,
now,
so they park there.
Let me jump in and ask, we've seen how warm and welcoming and honestly accommodating you are for your guests. So have you figured out a way to track that for your taxes, or to know how it's affecting your monthly income? Do you track the red wine and the breakfast bars and the things that you offer, which are really thoughtful, just to kind of keep notes on how you're doing as a renting out your bedroom?
Right. I do. I keep pretty good records of, but because we share so much stuff,
right.
But if anything that I purchase specifically, like for each guest that has come, whether the shampoo and conditioner and soap is still got a lot remaining, it all gets replaced, and I supply toilet paper and Kleenex for the first month that they're here. And then they supply that. And then there's cleaning supplies in the bathroom if they want, for the entire room. And I have offered, do you want me or someone to come in and clean, or no? And they said, no, we'd rather do it ourselves. So it's it's not a big deal,
right?
So
that's a great lead in too, because Katie and I have both looked at your listing. It's super cute. We love your description. And, we find on Furnished Finder, a lot of times there aren't always reviews. So I did notice that every guest you've had so far has left you 5-star reviews. So how do you ensure quality reviews, and how do you make sure they're present on your listing when they decide to move on to another city?
Well, I think it's like any relationship. You're living together for 3 months at a time. After the first month, we might be having a meal together, or, like 2 ships in the night, having coffee or whatever. And I have done this with all 3 of my ladies and said, okay, you've been here for 30 days. Is there something that you need or want or are missing? Or is there anything we can do to make your stay better? Or are we doing something that's annoying you? Let's have it out. Let me hear it. So,
right.
We haven't had anything.
Well, great. And then how does it work asking for that review at the end for you?
Oh, I just do. I mean, I just
It's
ask.
verbal.
Good.
You send it in a text. You just ask for it. Great.
Yeah, right. When you know,
Good.
when you get a chance, would you please write a review
Awesome.
about how how you enjoyed your stay? And I that's why I ask them on a monthly basis, how are you enjoying your stay? Because I don't want it to come as a surprise that
Right.
there was something they didn't like or felt uncomfortable about.
Mhm.
You know,
That's
um,
great.
so I think if you keep everything up front,
Hmm.
and very transparent, you're not going to,
Mm-hmm.
everybody is going to have a very pleasant experience.
Hmm. That's great. The only thing I want to add in that I have found successful, and just a reminder to the audience, I'm a host in the Austin, Texas area, and honestly, most of our properties are North Austin all the way up to Belton. But one thing that I've found, because every one of my listings has reviews, and I do ask for them, is don't be afraid to ask before they've left if it's your first guest ever. So if you have your first 3 month stay, a month and a half in, you could ask for a review and say, "Hey, I would really love to have your feedback to help the next guest that wants to stay here as we're approaching the end of your stay." So that's just a good reminder of you don't have to wait till the end to ask for the review, especially if it's your first guest in the home. So thanks
Right.
for sharing on that. Katie, anything else in the landlord logistics you'd like to discuss?
I just had one question I thought of. You've had 3 guests now. You've been doing this for several months. All of your guests have given you great feedback, but is there anything that you have learned throughout the process and adjusted either from feedback from your guests or just from things that you have noticed have worked better? Kind of like you said, having the guest park in the driveway, right? Is there anything that you've tweaked along the way? Or because we all try something new and then we keep tweaking it and tweaking it and tweaking it until we get to as close as perfection as we can get, right? So are there any, ways you run the household or policies with your pet or amenities you provide or anything that you have done that you think has really, since you started, taken it up even further?
I think just being in constant communication with the guests about what their needs are, what their schedule is. My current guest has a family in Southern Maryland, and her own home is in Baltimore.
Okay.
And so frequently, when she has 3 days off or 4 days off, she goes back.
Right.
But sometimes, if it's only like 2 days off, she doesn't make the trip and she's here. So we have a whiteboard in the kitchen.
Oh, that's great.
And so I know when she's going to be here and when she isn't going to be here. And if it's only for like maybe 2 days, then I'll suggest that we have dinner together. Or maybe there is something going on in town. We have a lot of vineyards around here. And of course, now with the warm weather, there'll be activities that I'll suggest for them. Or would you like to do this together? Would you like me to show you, this beautiful orchard up in the mountains or whatever? So with just kind of staying on top of what their schedule is and what they might want to be doing, and making sure that they know what's going on in the area that might be of interest to them. And then the other thing is, and my current guest and I both like to cook. And so we've lots and lots of Tupperware. So when I make something, I make a little extra. So I went to a farmer's market. I'll give you a good example. I went to a farmer's market last weekend and bought these gorgeous beets. It was so beautiful. So I did pickled beets, and I also did the beet greens. So I had lots of, so I left her a Tupperware of the pickled beets and a Tupperware of the beet greens, and I had Tupperware myself, and I left her a note, said there's pickled beets in the fridge for you if you like them. Come to find out, it's the world's most favorite thing. They're beets. She loves them.
Oh,
Such a hospitable host.
That's the kind of, that's the kind of
right.
thing that we do.
And the whiteboard seems like earlier in the show you mentioned that you try not to get too invasive on why aren't you here? Where are you? And so the
Right.
whiteboard really opens up that opportunity to stay in communication without having to constantly ask those questions if they want to have that
Right.
time with you.
Right. If she's
Right.
going to be here, then she's going to be here. What she does is her business. I just will
Right.
put down her initial, E, and then gone on the days that she's not going to be here.
Nice.
And those are the days when, we try not to crisscross each other doing laundry.
Right.
But I do my husband's laundry from the nursing home.
Okay.
So that's one of the things that we are in constantly, you're going to be using the wash, you washing today? Nope, I'm not. Okay, fine. I'm going to do it then. But again, there, just like any other relationship, there's not much that you can't work
Figure out. Right.
if you communicate.
Mm-hmm. Why don't you tell us about your book? What do people need to know about your book?
I wrote the book as a result of my writing in my journal. When my husband was diagnosed, we spent a lot of time sort of backtracking. Well, he was diagnosed 9 years ago, but before that, I noticed some behavioral changes. I noticed, and hindsight, of course, is 2020.
Right.
Sure.
So I thought, well, I've got to start writing a journal, writing down the changes that are inevitable, that are going to occur, not just to be aware of them, but to try to figure out how do I deal with them. And so the journal, after a lot of nagging from several friends, became a book. And so I just took all my notes, and I put it into book form. And I don't know how it came up to be that it was A to Z. It just seemed to me one day I just started writing, and I was like, well, I've got two things that are A and a B, and maybe that's how I'll energize myself to complete it. So that sort of worked out very well. And what it literally is a guide for people who are entering this journey of caregiving for a dementia patient. So if I were to chat with someone who's in a position like mine, let's say 5 to 10 years out, there probably are some hints in the book that they might learn from. But basically, this is for people who are completely blindsided by what is about to happen. It is
which has to be the majority of people in that situation, right?
Well, sure. Some people have had to care for maybe a parent in the past, but and then their spouse, comes down with some sort of dementia, whether it's Alzheimer's or Lewy body or whatever. But I think you're right. I think the majority of people are just blindsided. They just don't know what to expect, because intellectually, when someone says to you, it's progressive and irreversible. Well, intellectually, you understand what the meanings of those words are, but you don't understand how they manifest themselves.
Right.
So the progression could be nothing for 6 months, except normal aging forgetfulness. But then one day you take the laundry upstairs and you find all of the white washcloths from the linen closet are now in his sock drawer. And the dog did it. Strange.
I remember a situation like that with my grandma. We could tell there were some signs kicking in, but we were at a really nice restaurant on a top balcony in overlooking Lake Travis in Austin. And my grandma just decided to take a napkin and throw it over the side of the railing. And we're like, Grandma, why did you do that? She's like, why not? And so that was one of our funny instances that she would have never done that in the past, but
right.
in that
Right.
moment, she went for it. And
She went for
she
it.
embraced it.
Right. Right.
So in our
So,
past conversation, I really
mhm.
liked what you said about when someone finds out that a family member has cancer versus someone finding out that they have dementia, what the difference was there for you. Why don't you expand on that?
Oh, okay, I will. That's why, that's one of the reasons that I wrote the book for the caregiver, because when a person, and I did give the example of cancer. So
Hmm.
we're lucky to have the Emily Kirk Cancer Center here in Charlottesville. It's a wonderful facility.
Hmm.
And if you were to go there and you were diagnosed with breast cancer, you would leave that facility with a shopping bag full of
Mm-hmm.
books, notebooks,
Hmm.
um,
Which is
uh,
great.
everything from what to wear to what to eat
Hmm.
to, you can't imagine all of the literature,
Hmm.
support literature in a
Hmm.
shopping bag. And I have a friend who was diagnosed twice with cancer, so I've lived through this with her.
Hmm.
Right.
But when my husband was diagnosed with vascular dementia, uh, I got a handshake from the doctor who made the diagnosis, and
Oh,
with instructions to find a cardiologist and a neurologist and stay in touch with your primary care doctor, blah 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 blah. And thank you very much, it was nice meeting you.
oh,
Mm-hmm.
Like,
it's tough.
I you can't give a dementia patient instructions because inevitably they're not going to be able to read.
Right.
So, but the caregiver is not given any place to find help
Hmm.
unless you really, really, really search. Now, I have to
Hmm.
say, over the last 9 years, there have been more independent support groups that have
Hmm.
popped up.
Hmm.
I'll be speaking to one of those in Winchester, Virginia, in
Oh,
June.
great. Great.
Um, but many more. When I say independent, outside of a hospital or outside of the Alzheimer's Association,
Hmm.
which is a terrific association, and their primary goal is to raise money for research, and I applaud
Okay.
that.
Hmm.
But a lot of people don't have a very active Alzheimer's chapter in
Okay.
their area, and COVID did a lot to dissuade people from going to support meetings anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But they do have a wonderful 800 number. If you,
Good.
I've called them a couple times when something happened, and I've thought, what is going on? And they were very, very helpful. But what I've done is I've tried to think of everything
Hmm.
from family relationships to most especially financial,
Hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
that becomes much more complicated than you can even imagine.
Right.
Um, if you, for instance, if you don't have power of attorney,
Hmm.
there is almost nothing that you can do on your own. Because
Okay.
if you're married, the house is in both
Right.
of your names. Frequently, credit cards are both in the names. Utility companies might be in his name and not yours.
Hmm.
It's so there's a lot of, I've stressed that a lot, the financial.
It
Um,
sounds super helpful. And where would someone find your book if they wanted it?
they can go to my webpage, which is A to Z dementiacare.com, or they can go to Amazon.
Great.
It's
And is
it's
the A to Z a dash or spelled out?
it's spelled out.
Okay. And
And I
and Amazon.
and the website is also where my blog is.
Okay.
So
Great.
I tried, when I discover new things, I try to keep the blog up to date as well. And oh, by the way, if you go to Amazon to get my book, for some reason
Uh-huh.
it's easier to find it by my name rather than the title of the book.
Mm.
I don't
Okay,
know.
great. Reminder for everyone, that's Jane Foy, Foy.
Now I do have one more question that's popped in, and forgive me if this is too personal. You do not have to answer it by any means, but I'm curious how, you seem very welcoming, and it seems like you get a lot of joy and satisfaction out of hosting these nurses, right? That's so obvious, and I think just admirable in all of the ways. Um, I can also imagine on the flip side how hard it is to have your husband going through what he's going through, not having him in the house and having that, your whole world turned around there. How has it been, for your mental health and kind of going through that transition has having company and being able to kind of dive into this new adventure helped to some degree? Walk me through that if you're open to it, because I can only imagine that, on one half of it, it's devastating to watch that happen to someone you love for so long. And at the other side, it does seem like there's a lot of positivity coming out of this new chapter, for at least in your own household, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the way you have to think about it. I think a fairly pragmatic individual. When I was told irreversible and progressive, I believe it. Right. And so at this point, I mean, it'll be a year, day after tomorrow, that I admitted him into this facility. So I knew, and thankfully had a wonderful gerontologist who was my support arm.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that was the best place for him, and
Right.
It was certainly the best place for me, because it is mighty hard having an 80-plus-year-old infant in your home, and
Right.
that's what you're dealing with when you're dealing with dementia. So, and I know that each month and each week that has passed, his memory has declined even further. So
Mm-hmm.
he's pleasant, and he seems pleased when he sees me. I had to be away from him for 5 days because I went to see a friend's mother in a nursing home, and they had 21 cases of positive COVID testing. And then so I had to test myself, but the nurses and I both agreed that it would be a much better idea if I just stayed away for 5 days. So I tested negative 3 times, stayed away for 5 days. He had no idea I was gone for 5 days. None. So he's not aware of timing. Okay. So I go every other day, and unless I'm traveling. And so I've adjusted to that.
Right.
I like what you said on a previous conversation. Tell them how you say goodbye every time when you leave your husband.
Well, I usually tell him I'm going to go home and do the laundry.
I love that, because it's like it's timing, right?
Yeah, I mean, I usually have a shopping bag full of laundry that needs to be done, and I say, well, I've got to go home and wash these clothes and dry them, and then I'll bring them right back. Mm-hmm. And he's good with that. Now, his definition of right back and my definition of right back is irrelevant.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So he doesn't get upset when I leave, and he's pleased when I come. He still understands how to give a kiss. Now, I don't know how many other people he kisses on the floor, but there's nothing you can do about that. But I think he just thinks I'm the nice lady who comes and brings him a cookie or candy or grapes or whatever. And we watched the PGA the other day, this afternoon. And we're originally from Pittsburgh, but today we were watching the Yankees and the Orioles play baseball. Mm-hmm. And then it's time to take the laundry and go home and do the laundry.
That. Right.
So we have about 10 minutes left. I'm going to go ahead and transition us to the last section, which is favorite Furnished Finder and key check features. So in previous conversation, Jane, you mentioned how valuable key check is to you. So why don't you expand on that?
Key check is a wonderful tool because they do the work. So as long as I had that state specific lease, and then I went in and adjusted for specifics. Mm-hmm. And then I just copy it each time I have, but that was very helpful initially, and I didn't have to rewrite it each time. Mm-hmm. So that was good initially, but for an ongoing service, the background check is great. I mean, I'm fully confident that I'm getting an individual to live in my home who pays their bills, has an income, is responsible, has signed a contract with a highly regarded hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have, a very a quality individual staying with me, and they did all the work. They did all the background. I didn't have to do it.
That is nice. And it's literally like a 5-minute process if you want it to be, because you just press send on the
Absolutely.
screening request and it's directly in their inbox. And as quick as they fill out the information is as quick as you can move forward.
That's exactly the way it has worked out. Yes.
Okay, good.
So I'm so grateful for that, because I'm not big on paperwork. I have enough paperwork to do. Just,
Don't we all? So, Furnished Finder,
Right.
you had mentioned don't be scared of unmatched housing. Tell the audience what you meant by that.
So you will get some tenant references that meet all of your criteria, or you meet all of their criteria, which is fine. But you'll also get inquiries where you don't meet all of their criteria. And I'll give you a good example. My current tenant fell into that category. She met all the criteria except she wanted a private entrance.
Oh, okay.
Well, this is a townhouse. There's one way in, and then there's a very troublesome way to get out through the back fence. So you have one entrance. And so I just texted her and said, you would be my third guest. My first two guests had no problem whatsoever sharing the front door with me, because I'm here by myself with my dog.
Mhm.
And we give you as much privacy as you could possibly want. So if you'd like to chat about that, please give me a call. And she did. And she saw the pictures of the place, and we talked, and we did FaceTime. I showed her the rest of the house. I showed her the dog, showed her the back door, and
That's a great idea, doing a FaceTime introduction so they can see
Right. So this is
a
the
little
door
bit more.
Sure. Like, this is the door you'll be using, and these are the stairs. You go right up the stairs, you hang a left, you go to the end of the hall, and nobody will see you coming or going. So
Right.
she was really rethought that bit of that criteria.
But I think that idea of FaceTiming, and actually, I mean, that is a whole nother level, which is just so great because it lets them imagine themselves in the space.
Right. I mean, I don't want anybody to feel as though there are any surprises coming that they don't want to have, a kind of surprise they don't want to have,
Right.
So the more that they can see what their living arrangement will be like, the better.
That's really it for me. Do you have any final questions, Katie?
No, it's been so great to talk to you. I love your story, and I love, how you made such a positive impact on these nurses. And I mean, you seem like just such a joy, and the impact that you have made in all of these different areas is very, very impressive and appreciated.
Well, thank you. And they have reciprocated in kind. It's been wonderful to have their company, to learn about their diverse backgrounds. So it's been a win-win for everyone.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Jane. Enjoy your upcoming trip to Sicily, and more great Furnished Finder stories to come.
All right. Thank you both very much. I think this was an excellent idea that you had. Excellent.
Well, thank you.
All right.
We're very proud of our Furnished Finder hosts.